Today's talk I'm excited about. And actually, it has nothing to do with medicine, but it might be one of the most important talks we do because it relates to how we can grow our practices, which, if we can't grow our practices, our businesses, we can't have the impact that we want to have, right? It doesn't matter how much intellectually or scientifically, but if you can't find the people to take care of or to listen to you, then it's all for naught. And I'm sure you guys are well aware that the way in which most of us have our practices or businesses run into challenges or when businesses aren't successful, it seldom is because of the science or the medicine. It's almost always because of something related to the business and most often growing. So today we're going to use a guy named Alex Hormozi as a case study for how we can think more strategically and tactically about marketing. How many of you guys know who Alex Hormozi is? I see Betsy, Jesse. Okay, awesome. He's not somebody that comes up a lot at the average longevity meeting, but he is probably the greatest direct response marketer of all time in terms of his ability to generate interest quickly and then convert that interest into business is really quite remarkable. I just used a term called direct response marketing, which may sound negative, but really direct response marketing is probably one of the most effective and efficient ways that we have as small business owners to convert interest into business. The contrast to all of this is something called brand marketing. When most people think about marketing, this is what generally comes to mind. You create a brand, you talk about what you do. Classically, you have billboards, you take out magazine ads. That's what people used to do. But nowadays, what people do is they might publish articles, they might write posts, you might do tweets, you might do LinkedIn. All of this stuff is what we call brand marketing. And this is important, right? But the challenge for all of us when it comes to building or growing a small business is that is very long-term oriented. And what that also means is it can be hard to measure the return on investment. It's something that builds over months, if not years. And it's very hard to attribute the effect of what we see. A good example of this is blog content or newsletter content. It's very important for us to put thought leadership out there, but the return on that can take months, if not years, to compound. An example of that is search engine optimization. When we put blog content out there, one of the main reasons is because Google crawls all of that and discovers that our site is expert in certain things. And so over time, people, when they put different keywords into Google, like peptide therapy or hormone replacement therapy, if we invest in
Nigga,
having
nigga.
content there, we will get a good response. But that takes time, right? It's not as though if you put out a post today, next week, all of a sudden Google's going to rank you. It takes weeks to months to really start ranking. So brand marketing is what most people do. When I talk to most people and I see what most people are doing, they're doing brand marketing. Direct response marketing is much more focused. For a lot of us, when we get direct response marketing, we get it. You might feel this is too over the top. It feels like multi-level. It feels like too much. And so instinctually, a lot of us shy away from it. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to do it. And what I'm here to tell you today is that actually is probably hurting us in the long run. There is a reason why people do this, right? And that is because it works. It works. And I think that there is a way to do it in such a way that you can have it be tasteful, have it be aligned with your brand. I've even seen companies do this in this space. And I'm going to talk about some examples at the end that might illustrate how we can do this for ourselves in our own businesses. But in contrast to brand marketing, direct response marketing is you email somebody, you say, here's an offer. If you take an action, it's a discount, a promotion, or a lead. You offer them something, they either take an action or they don't, and you measure that. It's very focused. And the idea is that you're getting a return on your investment much more quickly, measure that more precisely. What Alex did recently, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but he broke a Guinness Book record of number of books sold in one day. He sold almost 3 million books in one day. It's apparently a Guinness Book record. And I think in so doing, he netted about close to $100 million in one day, which is quite remarkable. Now, I took some time, I looked at his site, I looked at everything he did. I've watched several reviews of what he did. A lot of marketers have studied this because this was quite remarkable. What he was selling was basically a book and educational courses that relate to how to build businesses that make money, right? What we're selling is different, but looking at what he did, I do think there are a number of actionable lessons that we can apply to what we do. And so I broke down what he did into a few different steps and talked about how we can potentially apply it for ourselves. The first thing he did was what I call a mass registration event. This should ideally be free, but it should be something that drives people to give their email addresses, give their phone numbers, information you can use to build a relationship with them over time. He started promoting this mystery reveal event. He has millions of followers who really trust him. He's built, a brand and capital over time, relationship capital. So he led with this, hey, there's this mystery event. I want to talk about my biggest project yet. You're not going to want to miss this. Here's a link to sign up. And it was a free event with a single URL, and everything was driving towards that. Now, what can we do that is in the same vein? Now, obviously, most of us don't have millions of followers, but what we do have is expertise that people value. And we all work on things that people are increasingly thinking about more and more: longevity, health span, vitality. These things are top of mind. People want this for different reasons. They don't take action. It might be the cost, might be lack of information, might be a whole host of things. So, what can you do to help mitigate that? I think that's where something like a free open house, this is something actually we did at Modern Age. We called it an open house for longevity. This is relevant if you have a physical clinic. Even if you don't, you could also do this as a webinar, right? But offer a open house on longevity medicine. And you can fill that programming with any number of different talks. The point is you're offering something free that has some value that people want and that is easy for them to say yes to. In the process of saying yes, you're also going to get their email address, you're going to get their phone number, you're going to get some information that you can use to build a relationship with them over time. So I think that's one thing that he did. That's one thing that we all can do. There's nothing that stops us from doing it. And it doesn't have to be a huge investment of effort or time. If you have a physical space, you're already paying rent for it. You have the space, you have the knowledge. You could probably talk about your framework, your philosophy. You might be able to offer some free, like low cost services like B12 shots, like vitamin injections, things like that to kind of get people feeling they got something out of it. In so doing, you're building awareness of what you do. I think this is something we should all be doing more of. For this program, Next Generation Medicine Mentorship, I kicked it off with a free event on LinkedIn where I talked about why 2025 is the best year to get started in longevity medicine. That was successful. I got several people to join the course from that. A lot of the people who've joined since have come from the webinars that I've done. These have all been free, that promoted on LinkedIn. These are things we all can do. We can have an open house, a free webinar. These things can be very important to drive registration, to drive awareness. The second thing that he does super well, and this is more of a philosophy, but it's also something that you should keep in mind when you are delivering your event, is to teach first and then sell second. You want to provide value to people upfront. You don't want them to feel like they're walking into a sales pitch or like you don't want them to feel like they're walking into one of those presentations that we you do at the timeshares. You get a free weekend, right? But when you walk into that room, you're walking into a 1, 2 hour ordeal where you're going to get a sales pitch. You don't want people to feel like that, right? So prioritize teaching, educating. For example, you could start by giving a 30-minute, 45-minute talk on something of interest to people, like your best practices for sleep, strength, and nutrition. What's your go-to protocol? What do you do for yourself? Something like people will be interested in, including case studies. People love case studies. This is not just true in healthcare, it's true everywhere, right? Like you'll see Alex does this a lot. Talks about case studies, talks about this person lost or this person made this much money. Even though as clinicians, we like to think in terms of trials, epidemiology. The truth is, those things, even though they're huge studies, stories are more powerful. Stories about one person are more powerful to people than citing some population statistic. That's just how people think. So leverage case studies, leverage stories. People really resonate with that. If you already have been in business, you probably have patients that you can talk about. What's even better is you can invite them. You can give them an incentive. You can say, okay, you come to speak at this thing, offer a testimonial. I'll give you a free whatever session, something, right? But the case studies, testimonials are really important for the value transmission. So you spend the first part really delivering value. And all of this stuff to this point, I think we can all do. I don't think it feels uncomfortable, but this next part is uncomfortable. And I want to just put that out there. It's uncomfortable for all of us. It was uncomfortable for me when we did it at Modern Age. I've done it with this course too. And that is that you have to do something. Number three, you have to offer some urgency. You have to give people a reason to purchase now, not next week. It has to be now. And this is where you have to give people incentives. This feels super uncomfortable because it feels so salesy, the time limited promotion and blah, blah, blah. But you have to give people a reason to say yes on the spot. The reality is that if people are most activated to say yes when they're in front of you, when they've just listened to you and heard what you've had to say, that's the moment. So you have to give them something. There's two ways to do this. One is to offer a discount. The other is to bundle something to offer more value. I've done both in my current and past lives. I would argue that if you can, it is always better to bundle additional things than to discount. For example, if you have a longevity membership program, you can say if you join today, you will get 3 free IV drips or something like that. Something that you can offer for free that's like low cost to you or like very low marginal cost to you that will be valuable to the patient. That's better than saying, hey, if you join today, I'll take $1,000 off the first year. I've done that, but I will say that in my experience, you're always better off offering something additional because you might be wondering, why is that? I think it's because people always feel like, okay, a discount, there's always going to be a discount. Even if the discount expires, it'll probably be there again at some point. We're used to thinking about discounts as being something that always gets offered at some point. In fact, for some consumer products, we will actively wait for sales. And we know there's going to be a Black Friday sale, there's going to be a Labor Day sale. We know all this stuff. But these products that are additions, those are sometimes a little bit more scarce. The other benefit is that you're not undermining the value of what you're selling. You're not diminishing the core value of what you offer. So I would submit to you that you're always better to bundle things than you are to discount, to offer incentives. So that's number three. Number four is what I call social proof at scale. This is hard. We can't do this at Alex's level. We don't have millions of followers. We can't go for Guinness records. There's things that he's doing that are many levels above where most of us are. I do think take from the lessons of social proof. We should be leveraging testimonials if we have them. We should be talking about the before after metrics of our patients. If we know them, if we don't have them yet, we can talk about what's possible based on data. But where we can use testimonials, we should absolutely be using testimonials. The other thing that you can do, and this is in between creating urgency and social proof, is limiting the size of the cohort, right? So whatever this program is, whatever the promotion is, limit the number so that people have some sense of urgency and also exclusivity. People respond to both those things. So that's something that we can all do. Again, we can't do it at the level that people like Alex do it, but I think we can draw from the lesson. Number five is probably the most work, but it's also one of the most important things. And that is to really build a machine of engagement and to have a drumbeat that drives towards what you're offering, right? So if you signed up for Alex's webinar a few weeks ago, you probably got no less than 50, 60 emails, texts, which is extreme, right? I'm not saying we should do that's extreme. But the reality is that what the data shows and what experience shows is that the more emails you send, the more of this that you send, the more sales generally that happen, right? Because people are busy, they don't see things in their inbox. If you're hitting that inbox up, if you're lighting it up more, you're generally going to get more awareness. There's a balance, right? The more you do this, you will get more unsubscribes. So there's a game that you play, right? But I think most of us are more on the side of not doing enough. Most of us might send one email, but I can tell you that's not enough. You have to be sending more than one. And ideally, you should be using multiple channels. You should be using text, you should be using email, you should be posting on your social. Your people should be seeing and hearing from you on multiple channels. Using a really robust CRM tool like HubSpot or Zoho can be really helpful because you can create flows that are automated, multi-channel, and drive towards these goals. You need to think about building a machine. When you get somebody's email or phone number, you have to have programming that they then get. Now, it takes some time to build this. It takes some time to build this. I'm not saying on day one you've got to have robust campaigns for everything, but you should start to invest in this, right? It's not going to be sustainable for you to be doing this manually. And this drumbeat does work. I'm not suggesting that you should be trying to spam people with 50 emails, but I think most of us, as I said, are rotated in the other direction. If we're being honest with ourselves, we probably can be sending more. I certainly feel that way about myself. I think most of us are more in that direction. Remember that what we're working on is health, right? We're not selling phones or computers or these other things that we get promotions about all the time. This is health, and it's not just a supplement. This is health in the most holistic way. Most of us here are clinicians or we're building medical practices of some sort. People deserve to hear about this multiple times because it is important. We'll talk about this in a future video, but how can we make those emails as engaging and valuable as possible? I think is a topic of a webinar or talk. If we're following this teach first, sell second concept, even if we do start ramping up the number of emails, texts that we're sending, if we're staying true to that concept, people will still find value and ultimately engage. And then the last thing, which is really part of the drumbeat, relates to this idea that we're building up to an event. We promote the event. We have emails being sent 1 week out, 5 days out, day before, day of, all talking about different things. And then there has to be something that happens after, right? So after your event, people should be getting emails about signing up, right? They just came to your event. You should offer them extension of the discount if there was one, offer FAQs, handle objections, things like that. You want to have a plan for the follow-up too. This formula, has been proven to be quite successful. What you have to keep in mind also is that there's going to be drop off, right? Like you're going to have, of all the people that you initially send ads to that you get their attention, I think 2 to 5% is actually high. It's probably much lower, right? Those people, if they sign up for a 1 year membership, they're paying you thousands of dollars many times. It absolutely can be worth it. But you have to be thinking about this through the lens of building a machine and a funnel and a system. And then what you have to do over time is learn from how things go and optimize the system. And another topic that we should talk about in the future is how do you measure? What are the best ways to build a system that measures performance so you know, okay, last time we had a lot of drop off after registration. Maybe we need to send more reminders to people, right? And by measuring these rates, and this is not complicated conceptually, it's just complicated logistically. Like, how do we gather all the data? What's the best software? We have to be measuring. If we're not measuring, we can't improve it. We talked a little bit about what an offer is. This is the 6 part framework that I like to think about, where there's got to be a promise of some sort, right? Like in 6 months, you will feel better, or in 6 months, we will improve this biomarker, or something like that. You have to talk about what's included, right? In 90 days, you will lose 15 pounds, or in 90 days, you will improve 3 biomarkers. There has to be some promise. And then you have to say what's in the box. You're going to get a comprehensive baseline assessment that includes 500 biomarkers. You're going to get 1 hour with our expert clinician. You're going to get 3 follow-up meetings with the clinicians. Then you've got to say how much it costs. And if there's a discount, talk about that. And then what you have to talk about is the price. You have to give them some way to de-risk it, right? One thing that you can always offer is money back guarantee, satisfaction guarantees, things like that, things to help people feel like they have an out if they don't have a good experience. And again, with this sort of product, it's one thing to offer something like this with a to-do list subscription, right? Like things that are very easy to switch from. These sorts of things in practice, people are, once they're in, and if you do a good job, you're building relationships. Like people are not going to ask for their money back unless they are very unhappy. So for this type of business, not too much to offer a money back guarantee, in my opinion, given the nature of what we do. You do have to have urgency. Otherwise, people are not going to make a decision. And then the last part is proof, like testimonials, any data that you have, all that. This is what an offer is all about, right? If you haven't done this already, you should open up a Google Doc, create an offer for your core program, check each of these boxes, write out what each of these things should be. And you can use ChatGPT as a thought partner on this. It can do a pretty good job. That's really most of what I had. This will all be posted on the website. There's a potential implementation roadmap where you can do this. You can do this in 1 week. If you create your offer, your lead magnet, you can get going on this pretty quickly. There are some metrics that are useful industry standards. If you have people coming to your landing page, your registration page, or whatever, if they're warm traffic, meaning people that like you are, I would shoot for a 25 to 45% opt-in rate. If you tell somebody, hey, please go to this, or if you give a talk somewhere, and if you talk about the opt-in about your event, like I would aim for a 25 to 45% rate for warm traffic. Cold traffic is different. If you're just promoting the event on some social channel or something like that, then the numbers are going to be much lower. But your opt-in rate for warm traffic should be about 25 to 45%. The people who do sign up, again, I would target, again, about 25 to 45% of people showing up to the event. The take rate, the industry standard is 5 to 15%, but most of us are selling more expensive things. So I think it might be closer to 1 to 2%. Refunds and churn, industry standard is 5%. I would say we should be closer to 1 because this is something that should be sticky and we should be doing a good job. Your email open rates, any good marketing software will tell you what your open rates are. Ideally should be roughly around 30%. If we're dipping below that, then you might want to pull back on the frequency or make the content more valuable. I think one thing we can all do on some level is figure out what an offer can be, right? Let's think about an offer, an event to support the offer, build out that architecture and go through that exercise. I think will be fruitful for most of us. Okay, so that's what I had. I'll pause here. If there are any questions, I'm happy to talk about either what I just spoke about, or if people want to talk about their own marketing challenges or business challenges, we can talk about that as well. People are just crushing it on this.
I think this was great timing. I put a message in our WhatsApp group asking about that Health Experts Alliance. As I've been stewing for the last 6 weeks, not working, starting the company, just trying to really figure out not how to cut corners. I agree, the salesy part is uncomfortable for physicians, but trying to maximize income, work less, not work more. How can I automate some passive income and generate leads like this? Where can I more quickly scale, hire a mid level, hire a gut expert, a health coach, have offers built around them? How can I do these things from the beginning or at least early on? I think it's really good timing. I haven't thought about my offer, but I'm excited to explore that.
Has anyone here used Health Experts Alliance before? I'm familiar with them, but I'm curious to hear if anyone has any experiences with them.
I feel like I know what to expect.
Isaac is a very good salesperson, right? The content he's going to talk about is going to be similar, among other things, to what I just said. I think a big thing that a lot of people talk about is making your own courses and having that be a way to have passive income that's scalable, and how you can use courses to build a larger product conversion funnel. We talked about that in an earlier session, but courses can be beneficial in the sense that they give something that you can sell. It's scalable and it can also give people a way to become interested in what you're doing without having to commit to the big ticket program. So it gives you ability. So there's lots of reasons that they're good. I think that if you've already invested in this program, you probably will not learn anything new from his program content wise, but I do think that there is value to just listening to how he talks and his style, right? Like he's clearly figured out how to be compelling, how to get your attention. And yeah, he may strike a lot of us as a little bit over the top, but he's like an Alex Hormozi, right? We can take bits and pieces of what he does to convince us as physicians to engage. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what are the things he's done that have made us interested? And how can we emulate those same things for our patients? So I think engaging with content like that or courses or people like that is useful, not so much for the core content that he's going to share, but actually for these sorts of things, because it enables us to reflect on what they're doing to influence us. I think just stylistic things that we can learn.
It definitely gets ideas flowing, expands your thought process around the business. I agree with how you
Yeah.
phrase that. For private practice, you can't schedule a patient unless they're in the EMR. I've been working with Sunita about this. And one of the recommendations is using Go High Level. You click on a button, you can get them registered. When I logged in for that and signed up, it's $100 a month plus add-ons, and that's a full-on CRM funnel
Yeah.
builder.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to just use Calendly to schedule people because that's all I need. But starting to look around and play with it, what are your thoughts on products or how to
Yeah.
build out those kind of things? Get the data.
I so I've used Go High Level, I've used HubSpot, I've used Salesforce. All of these are tremendously powerful tools. They can feel very overwhelming to start. Personally, here's what I would say. I do think it's worth your while to start learning how to use those. Because I'm assuming you're using Calendly to book informational consults. You might use Calendly to book these informational calls, right? They're not patients yet. What you'll quickly find is, okay, I'm doing these Calendly events. I just spoke to them. Great. Now I want to follow up with them. I want to ping them in a week, 2 weeks. What you'll quickly find is it's a real pain to do this manually. And also, when I am doing it manually, I'm pretty much saying the same thing every time. I'm saying, hey, great conversation. Just checking in. Are you still interested? You'll be saying that over and over. And so what you'll quickly find yourself wishing you had was something that could, as soon as you finish your meeting, they get an email, another email in 2 weeks after that. That's where I would suggest tinkering in your go high level. I actually use HubSpot right now. These are very involved tools. It's worth investing the time and energy now to know your way around them because eventually you'll want to build things that are more complicated. And it's easier to make something that you've already built. You can add things to like what you've built versus trying to start from scratch. So that would be the first recommendation. As far as specific software, I actually do personally like HubSpot the best. I know you've already bought Go High Level. I think Go High Level is great. I personally find that HubSpot combines really robust functionality with some degree of simplicity. I think Salesforce is way too much for most people. Unless you're a big corporation, Salesforce is going to be overkill. And then like Zoho, there's like others that are lighter weight and cheaper, but you will eventually outgrow those. I like HubSpot. I have no affiliation with them other than I use them. That's just my opinion on that, on the CRM side. This is something that's been out there for years, decades. People have been saying, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a EHR plus CRM? Wouldn't it be great to have this all be one thing? And this call for product has been there for 2 decades now. No one's done it. I think it's because they're just two extremely fundamentally different things, and it's very hard to be good at both. They're such different animals. I think that makes sense to start, but my recommendation would be I would start tinkering with your CRM.
Challenges that I have found, and we've tried some of the things you're talking about in terms of events and social media, is that there's so much interest in longevity in
Mhm.
general that we get a lot of inbound from those things, but the conversion is so low. Most of those people are not in market for a high-end, expensive clinic. And so I've struggled to identify, other than Google, which is limited and expensive, where we can find people who are in market, because otherwise we just get a lot of unqualified leads.
So I think one suggestion I would have for that is who are you targeting? For example, at Modern Age, we had a similarly priced ticket item. So if we blasted an event, let's just say we were doing an NYC open house type thing. If we blasted owned social, when I say owned social, by the way, for people who don't know what that means, it's like what you post in your own account. Contrast that with paid social, which is basically you putting an ad that people get pushed to. So if you're putting stuff on, if you're blasting this on own social, paid social, you're going to get like a real mass of people. And yes, because there's so much interest in longevity, you'll get a decent number of registrants, but a lot of them will be unqualified, as you said. What you might find more fruitful is to think about, okay, what are some niches or places, people that are likely to purchase this hang out or where do they live? One thing that we found to be very fruitful was we partnered with this company called Chief. They're a women's professional network. We did a few events and targeted their email lists and did stuff on their channels. And we also eventually just started targeting on social. We targeted those audiences, right? Like, and we found that to be much more successful because we were targeting a much more qualified, high income, high awareness, high intent group. I would wonder if there might be a way to refine your targeting a little bit and
Mm.
have you focus on an audience that is more likely to purchase. So I wonder if there might be a way to be even more targeted with who you're trying to reach.
Affinity groups, we have
Yeah,
done some of that. I think Chief is a good example, and YPO, or those sorts of
YP,
things, or
great.
founder groups or things like that.
And I think just something free. I'll be
Mhm.
happy to give a talk about longevity to your chapter. Another great one is alumni associations, your college, right? These groups are looking for programming and something like longevity, they're not going to say no to, especially
Yeah.
free. So I think focusing on these affinity groups can be helpful, but the mechanics of all of this are the same. You still have to create urgency, you still have to demonstrate value, you still have to do all those things that are part of the offer. By being more refined in who you target, you can improve your conversion.
Thanks.
I got a quick question. Has anyone ever tried Let's say someone doesn't want to pay $500 a month, but you might find 10 people that want to pay $100 a month and do these 1 hour a month online cohorts around a topic. You do a hormone panel on all of them, or you focus on sleep or nutrition or gut testing, whatever it is. You find a cohort virtually. It's pretty efficient use of time for a provider that way. That's how I was thinking about creating a tier if I needed more revenue in a time efficient manner. Has that ever been done?
Say that again. So you'd be doing what exactly?
They may not want to be a comprehensive patient, but let's say they just want to make sure their hormones are in check, or they wanted to run a GI map test, some online, whether it's a one off thing where each person pays $100, but you have 10 of them present, right? So it's $1,000 an hour. Or let's say they want to meet once a month just to review a certain topic. They have a similar focus. And so you're providing care to a cohort instead of one on one.
Group-based care and group visits can be really effective and scalable, especially if done right. I think the tricky part is how do you do it right? I think what you'll find, and we experimented with this a little bit at Modern Age, was that you get a mixture of people. There are some who very much want more one-on-one attention and others who don't need it. It can be hard to balance the needs of the group adequately, but I think it's worth trying. I would say it's definitely worth testing. If we offer something at this price, if the incremental bump in demand justifies it, then I think it's worth it. And again, a lot of those people are going to be great candidates to eventually work with you one-on-one. Or like you do a good job with the group, some of those people are going to want more. When you do a good job with someone's health, they want more. Generally speaking, when it comes to this sort of thing, people will want more when you do a good job. I think it's a great idea. It's definitely worth trying. Has anyone else in the group done group visits? Any experience with it?
I've thought about it, but I don't know if it seems like a great use of time. I guess it just depends on what you're looking for, how many people you think would sign up. But I did, Jesse, one thing I wanted to say that you were asking about the clientele. One thing that I was against, but that we just did, and I thought it's been helpful in the last 2 weeks, is finally putting a starting price point on your website for the people that are absolutely not interested. They won't even contact you. And we can look at our metrics to see how many people are looking at the website, but then what the turnaround is. And it's actually helped reduce the amount of calls that's coming through the office. And then you have more high yield calls and then more high yield signups.
Yeah, that can definitely work. The point is to experiment. You should test your price. You should be running experiments, ideally, right? And there's ways to do this. In fact, maybe we'll talk about this next week because I think this is really important. It's like, how do you actually do these experiments in a way that isn't super disruptive to your business? And I think there are techniques and software that you can use to help test things like this. For example, there's software that can help you have two versions of your website. People randomly get assigned to one version versus the other. You can have one version of your site that has the price, another version that doesn't, and you can collect data on how things perform. That sort of thing is ultimately how you win and succeed. The best companies do things like that, and they get 1% better every week, and that compounds over time, right? There's a misunderstanding. People think that what makes companies or clinics successful is, oh, they discovered this one protocol or strategy. It's never that, almost never. It's every week getting 1% better and having that mindset of like always finding something to improve, which requires you to have an operating system that measures things. If you're not measuring anything, you're not ever going to know what to improve. But I think what you said is a good point. I've definitely seen it be the case that sometimes explicitly revealing the price can be helpful. Okay. Anyone else? Any other thoughts, questions?
Just to comment on the group things. We talked about a long time ago, early in practice, and you've been in practice for 20 years now. So we've gone through a lot of renditions. But one of the things we've learned is the last thing you want to do in our business is be trading dollars for hours. And that's really a dollar for hour kind of thing. And it's going to discourage people from getting into programs and things. I do a foundational health consult on people. It's $1,200 for my time for 1 hour to do a foundational health consult. But I won't keep doing hourly appointments like that, because even $1,200 an hour, I can make a whole lot more if somebody signs up for a program and is seeing me 3 times a year, and then I've gained the program fee all the time, and people are paying for access to me, but they're not bothering me every hour. So you have to be a little careful when you're starting to look at that dollars for hours revenue thing, because in the long run, you're like a plumber then. And that's what you just talked about not wanting to do. You want to not be working harder. And as soon as you start signing up people for those kinds of things, all you're doing is working harder.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think how you communicate your value matters a lot. And that's why when I'm going back to the offer architecture, you should not make people feel like the value is the number of visits they're getting. You should talk about other stuff. It should be clear to them that this is way more than 3 90-minute visits.
What they're paying for is that we are the leading edge all the time, and they're counting us to bring that to them. So they know that by having me in their back pocket, they're going to hear something and get to something before somebody else does. So that's what they're paying for this yearly fee. And I've people who pay me a yearly fee who literally see me twice, and that's plenty. They really just want that they know they're going to have that access, and they know they're going to hear the coolest and latest things. That's the clients you really want to get, and that's what's going to make you be able to work less and still have a good income. Not saying, okay, I'm going to say 5 people at the same time for $500. It probably is not worth your time over the long run. Develop more programs that are going to develop things when you're sleeping or vacationing.
One way to tweak the group visit concept is instead of having it be group visits where it's like you have however many 90-minute visits, it's a group program where they're in a program together. There's a community, and you're muted, Betsy, but I think reading your lips, I think you're saying
Exactly. That they can create then where they even have their own community to talk to each other.
exactly. So that's a great example. And there are ways to do it in such a way that you don't trade your time for money. A struggle I've had is with marketing companies. I've tried numerous that, yeah. Oh, Neil. Hey, Neil. To be honest with you, for small businesses, I think it's better to try to do some of this yourself. It's worth learning some of these things. And we're going to cover some of this stuff. In my experience, there are some really good companies out there, but it's very hard to find them. And they're often very expensive. The other point that I have is that when I work with these social media companies, I feel like I spend more time just changing what they've created. The creative isn't right, or the message isn't right. And I think in this day and age where we now have AI, I think that we should be trying to iterate ourselves a little bit. Obviously, you reach a point you can't do that, but I do think that is worthwhile. Now, if you're beyond that point, I can give you a couple names, but I think it is really worthwhile for us to do some of this ourselves because that is ultimately going to be, you're going to get the best result from that. At some point, it just becomes a matter of you don't have the time. If you haven't figured out what works on your own, then you shouldn't hire an agency. An agency is not going to help you do that, or seldom will they. Sometimes they will, but it'll be a very expensive endeavor. What I would try to do is iterate on your own, find something that works, find creative that you know is performing, and then figure out, okay, how do I like blow this up? How do I like take this and generate a lot more stuff that's like it? When you come to these agencies with an opinion, this is true in general. For any sort of agency, anything that you hire, any service, you have to have an opinion about what you think the right thing is. If you don't, then it's going to be expensive and sometimes futile and sometimes even harmful. So I would think about it like, have you formed an opinion and a point of view? Neil, send me a note privately if you want to get some specific names. I really do think it's worth doing some of these exercises yourself. Anna says, we don't value the impact of innovative business models enough in Europe. For example, a partnership between a virtual bank and a health provider being advantageous. Yeah, no, that's a great example. I think that financial advisors and banks can be really good partners. I've heard of practitioners who have relationships with wealth managers and send each other clients. The two are highly related. That's a great point. It's a really great point. Okay. All right. I know it's 11, so I want to respect everyone's time. I appreciate everyone joining. The recording will be up in the next day or two. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Bye.